Good morning. You're listening to 10 Minutes on Tuesday for Propel, and I'm your host, James Haken of Elliott's. I'm delighted to be joined today by Mark Morris of the website and social media presence of chefs, Staff Canteen. Great to have you on the show, Mark. Why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, the Staff Canteen, and how you ended up being here doing this?
The Staff Canteen was actually a byproduct of a recruitment company that I started and still have, and it originated as a forum on that website, and we called it the Staff Canteen, and it's probably the question we get asked more than any other question: why did you call a website for chefs the Staff Canteen? And if you think back to 6 or 7 years ago, or actually slightly longer now, 7 or 8 years ago when we started, this was pre-Facebook, pre-iPads, pre-iPhones, and one of the main ways to communicate online were via forums. So we just saw a forum area as an area where chefs could sit, talk, chew the fat, and that's, I hope, where the term the Staff Canteen and what the logo says.
It's brilliant to learn so much about Staff Canteen. It'd be great to understand what you think chefs' kind of overall perception of social media is and where you think it fits within the industry, particularly from that kind of angle that you look at.
Firstly, I think chefs have really embraced social media. And I think that, first and foremost, there's a misconception in the business community that Twitter is the be-all and end-all of social media. In our opinion, it's not. It's the darling of the press, and it gets more press coverage at the moment because there's always some footballer that's tweeted something that they shouldn't have done, or some celebrity that's done something. So it tends to be quite high profile. If you look at it in terms of metrics of what drives more traffic back to us, then Facebook is really the number one tool for us. But I think the way that chefs use it, they use it very much as a communication tool on Twitter. You know, Twitter's pretty much replaced text messages, so they use it to directly communicate, what are you doing, what are you up to. I think the smarter ones are using it as a PR exercise. So here's our lunch menu, here's a photo of our lunch menu, we're recruiting, do you want to be part of the team? So people are using it in many, many different ways, and I think, like ourselves, the smarter chefs, if you look at the likes of Jason Atherton, for example, if you look at his Facebook page, it's very photo-led, lots of great images on there, lots of stories and celebrating the awards that him and his team have won. Whereas his Twitter account is a different message.
It's really interesting, Mark. Most of the names you talk about there are kind of big, well-known chefs that I'm sure everyone listening would have certainly heard about. But I'm wondering whether you think that there's a kind of broader use of social media beyond kind of chef patrons and these award-winning restaurants.
No, I think the big names will always drive attention because they are big names, and by nature they have, very, very high followings. But if you look, there's a guy on Instagram, Daniel Watkins, who we featured, and without sounding disrespectful to Daniel's operation, he works at a really great, I don't like the term gastropub because it always conjures up crazy images in my mind, but he uses Instagram absolutely amazingly. He has more followers than some of the big name chefs that I've mentioned earlier on Instagram, because of the quality of image that he produces, and he's constantly updating his food, and he's constantly communicating what he's doing via Instagram. So I think that's the beauty of social media, is that historically, 15, 20 years ago, if you wanted to be in the press, or you wanted to get noticed by the press, one, you probably had to be in London because, rightly or wrongly, the press seemed to get a nosebleed if they came out of London. But two, you had to, I guess, have something that was marketable and people wanted to talk about, and that was normally accolades, or it was normally great food, or both. But now, what you'll get, you don't have to have a Michelin star to have a Twitter account. You don't have to have a Michelin star to have an Instagram account. What we've seen with social media is a complete levelling of the playing field, and Daniel Watkins has the same tools accessible to him in terms of social media coverage as Jason Atherton does. And it's just how you use that and how you exploit it, I think.
Taking that all a little bit further, Mark, just wondering if you're kind of seeing businesses encouraging social media use and kind of promoting their chefs and teams to get involved in engagement across the social platforms.
I think that, again, if you look at some of the higher profile chefs, Tom Kerridge is a great one, is a great example of celebrating what his team does. So whenever we've done videos with Tom always wants to include his team. You know, it's never just about Tom. And one of the features we do, one of the heroes of the hot plate features, is, you know, a feature where the chefs are always saying to us, you need to feature this guy, you need to feature this guy. And I think what the smart guys and girls in the marketplace are doing is using social media to celebrate those really strong people within their team. And what they realise, and a lot of them with multi-restaurants, multi-outlets, international portfolios, is that they are one person and they cannot do it without their team. And they're very, very good and very quick to say, this is the guy that's on the hot plate, or this is the guy that's running this, or this is the lady that serves you, or this is our sommelier, and celebrating those people.
I always kind of try and throw in a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek question within these kind of interviews, Mark, and I'm going to drop it in now. Obviously, we are a marketing and PR agency at Elliott's, and we're involved in kind of promote social media usage within our clients. But one of the things that we try and do quite often is to keep it real. We try and encourage our clients to do it themselves, and we guide them within that path and help them to make sure it's consistent. But what's your opinion between kind of marketing or PR departments of restaurants running their own Twitter account, or chefs themselves?
I think that the challenge you have with social media is a lot of people are, you know, some of the chefs that we've already mentioned are incredibly busy and don't always have the time to do it. 99% of them do it themselves. But I think that the fact that it is original and the fact that it does come from the actual person, I think, one, helps the audience connect better. I think, two, you know, if there is a spelling mistake in it, do you know what? So what? It's not the end of the world. Life still goes on. But I think that, for me, anyway, I think, you know, as I said earlier, what social media does is it's kind of leveled the playing field for everyone. And I think if you're tweeting a PR company and you're getting a response from a PR company, to a degree, you're not speaking directly to that chef. And I think that still becomes then a barrier to that chef. And I think that's kind of what social media is about, and that's what social media is trying to break down. But I understand that, you know, some chefs are very busy and they don't have the time to necessarily respond to everything. But, you know, if you tweet Tom Kerridge or you tweet Zach Baines 99% of the time, well, not 99% of the time, all of the time, it's them that reply. You know, they do their own Twitter, they do their own communication, and I think that's what makes it really interesting, and that's probably why they have the social followers that they do. And you can probably tell it's them tweeting from some of the tweets that they put out, and I'm sure people in their PR companies at times are going, oh, maybe we shouldn't have tweeted that.
Another angle that I find really interesting, Mark, is that when I'm out and about and I'm talking to people, particularly within group or kind of multi-site operators, they kind of really are unsure about whether to let go of control from central marketing and the kind of head office function to a unit level, to operators. And it's interesting that you're obviously talking about chefs specifically getting involved, and wondering if you've kind of got any thoughts on that as to whether you think it's a good idea, bad idea, within those, particularly those kind of multi-site operators.
I think that's, you know, I think social media just becomes a part and parcel of everyone's job now. So if you're a chef, it's not just about cooking anymore. I think that, you know, you need to understand how you communicate, how you market, how you project yourself. And I think that if you're the guy or the girl that's doing that in a kitchen, or you're the restaurant manager and you're serving the food, or whatever your role is within the operation, that there's no reason that you can't become part of the marketing for that chain of restaurants. And I think it's much more individual and much more personal. Even within a group of, branded restaurants, each restaurant will still potentially have its own slight quirk or its own slight identity, and that restaurant manager or that chef may well make that unique. It will have its own customer base, its own unique following, because geographically people are more likely to follow that restaurant in a certain area than they are a restaurant in another area. And attached to that are people that work in those operations, and I think those are the people that should be tweeting and should be corresponding with customers, potential customers, potential new recruits. To me, it's almost got to become part of the modern day role where people are given that responsibility to do it. Obviously, there needs to be guidelines in place, just as there are guidelines in place for uniforms on duty and other conditions of any other workplace. I think social media just had to be treated the same as that.
One of the other things you've talked a lot about today is recruitment, Mark. Really wondering whether you're seeing people actively looking for chefs who are able to tweet, be out there on social media, and also whether companies are using social media more and more now to kind of encourage or promote their own recruitment brand, not just their consumer brand.
Yeah, I think that I think job boards are great and they will always play a part in the industry, but I think the ability to actually connect and understand more about an operation via whether that's photos, images, whatever it is, I think it's much more engaging than just a very functional 7 shifts a week, meals whilst on duty. And I think what people are starting to do now is they're starting to put a personality into their recruitment. And that's either, as I say, job ads now can have food photos in, they can have images in, they can have lots of things in them. Anything that makes them stand out, anything that gives them a bit of a USP above another hotel or restaurant. Recruiting chefs is a massive challenge, and there's an industry shortage. So anything you can do to make yourself or add a personality to your job, to your job listing, and to showcase what you do via rich media, I think is a huge advantage for anyone that's trying to recruit.
Thank you so much, Mark. I think that's all we've got time for today, but it's been really good to have you on the show, and I'm sure everyone listening will have found what you've had to say very interesting. I know that I certainly have. For everybody listening out there, I want to thank you so much for tuning in for the second podcast. Be sure to look out for the next one. And on behalf of Propel and Elliott's, have a good day.